Welcome, everybody. Today it's office hours. It's December 16th, and we're here to talk about SEO. And I think we've decided that we'd like to begin with some success stories because we've had some great things happen over the last week. So who would like to jump in and give us their first success story?
I've just noticed my ranking is improving. I'm getting more calls. So I'm excited about that.
That's great. Are you able to attribute to anything? Were there any significant changes you made recently?
I mean, really all I think is the backlinks, and I fixed a lot of H1 tag issues I had. Those are the two main things, which is surprising, like that I'm not sure if that's what did it or what, but maybe.
It's always hard to attribute to one thing, but it's always I'm always curious to see, well, what changed to make that happen? And yeah, great. That's great news though. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks.
Who else has a success story?
I'll go. So since I started this program, when we've, been tracking our traffic and analytics, we have had a steady increase in visitors to our site week over week for probably 6 months now.
Wow.
So we started out averaging I think under 200 visits a week, and now we're over 500 visits a week, which
wow, that's wonderful.
It's great. And we have a steady stream of content coming in both via the website and my phone. So, making small changes, not anything even really major, but just being more focused, paying attention to what is getting traffic and then capitalizing on that and doing more posts and more engagement-based things, based on that information has really helped us a lot.
I love it. I love that you're attributing it to a strategy. And it's so non-glamorous to say, oh, we're getting marginal growth week to week, but 6 months from 200 to 500, that's great.
Yes, thank you.
We're very happy. It's not trying to trick Google. It's just like trying to do marketing or something. Who'd have thunk? Lavanya, did you have a success story?
Well, I think due to me working with this Google Analytics, my website is getting seen by more people, and the potential client that I had, they found me through my website.
That's great. That's great news. Good luck on landing that client.
Thanks.
We're all rooting for you. Tricia, can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, so I have a client that I finished up a couple weeks ago website for, and then based on that, they referred our relative, which has another business, to do some work with them, which will probably be revamping the website, and then also a lot of stuff on Google MyBusiness, which is my primary expertise in my business. So I'm really excited about that. So
that's great. That's great. My success story, I think I mentioned maybe even last week that I got a placement in a periodical that they really respect. Well, what I didn't tell you is that I lost contact with them. They stopped replying to my emails. And so I'm like, oh no, it fell through the gaps. And that's kind of how this stuff works. You email, they say yes, then they disappear and nothing happens. And so I was like, oh no, do I have to go to the CEO who is so excited about this and say, sorry, it fell apart. We can't do. Well, one last ditch email. I just said, hey, are you still interested? And they got back and they're like, oh, thank goodness I lost your email. I'm like, but they said, in fact, what we really want is for you to do a regular column for our website. Okay. I think we might be able to write regularly for your website and rather than just do a one time. Wow. So that's a really great success story in terms of, the lesson to learn is don't give up. Everything within me is like, yeah, David, you suck. You watch this one again. And just that one last email. In fact, I wrote it thinking to myself, I'm being too timid. I'm being too passive. Like, oh, if you still want to do it. No, it was, in fact, what that did is it lit a little fire in them because they did want to do it. And they were like, oh, they didn't want to miss out on an opportunity from their perspective. They're like, oh, we're going to miss out. Wow, that's great. Like, I'm sorry that I don't want them to miss out either, but you know, it was good news. So.
That's excellent. That reminds me, I have some emails to send out.
Well, great. Well, like, we have a bunch of great questions submitted. Steffi's burning up the phone line, submitting great questions. But what I think what I like about these two is that I think there are some that we haven't talked about before. So that should be good for everybody. Your first question was, which was better to use? Pardon me. Triple W or non-triple W for a website? Or it doesn't matter. Did you want to elaborate on that question any?
No, just for some reason, dealing with like the redirects and stuff. And I mean, we always go with what they're already using. And especially if they've been around for a while, I don't want to rock the boat. But if they're a new website, I'm just curious, is there a pro or con to using one or the other? I think the redirecting issue, I think, became an issue for one of them recently, and I started questioning that for some reason. I can't remember why.
Yeah.
I think that was
you're
us,
asking a
Steffi,
very
right?
common question. Sorry, Allie?
I think that was us where there was a redirect issue from the old site, wasn't it?
No, this is something else. This is
Oh.
something else. But it was for like a new client, and I just wonder if we should just go with the non-dub for new clients.
Yeah. Well, it's a very common question. It's a good question. And I feel like you're already answering it correctly, which is, number one, it doesn't matter for Google whether you use one or the other, right? As long as you use it consistently. Like, the website's only accessible from one or the other, because that goes to the whole idea of a canonical website, where you have all your website, every page in your website is only accessible by one exact URL, triple W or not, HTTPS or not, only one. And so as long as you pick one and always 301 redirect from one to the other, you're okay. But like you, what I do is I'll run the backlinks to see where most of them are going. And if most of them already go to triple W, that's the one I'll stick with. If they're not, I will go the other way. The only exception being if there are two versions, HTTP, HTTPS, I will always defer to HTTPS for the SSL certificate. Right now, I've heard from a web development perspective, meaning enterprise level stuff, that it's probably better to use triple W because, for instance, let's say a client needs to add a subdomain for some reason. Let's say they want to do a help desk and they want to use a system like Zendesk. That's going to have to run on a subdomain. And so you'll want to have a subdomain set up for your main site, which would be triple W.
Oh, that's a big consideration.
Right. For big,
you can't do that if it's the other way around?
I'm sorry?
You can't do that with a non-dub is the main site?
I don't know. But
I think you can.
You might be able to. I just heard web developers say for forward compatibility, it's always best to stay with triple dub, just in case, so that people can easily make that distinction.
Okay.
But even if you can still run a non-triple W and then have a subdomain, which I don't know a technical reason why you couldn't do that. I like the neatness of having a triple W and not in a subdomain, but subdomains are a whole nother conversation. Now, I recently converted my main site to triple W, but that was because Cloudflare made me.
I think it had to do with Cloudflare.
Cloudflare did not allow me to run without a triple W.
So yeah,
So in that case, I just went ahead and switched so I could get the advantages of Cloudflare.
huh.
But the redirects are all set up. So although most links go to my non-triple W website, thanks to Cloudflare, now they all go to the triple W, and the redirect, the 301 redirect set up so I preserve most of my link equity. You lose a little link equity through the redirect, but in this case, I judged it was better to have Cloudflare and that advantages than not.
Mm.
So I guess
Okay.
the short answer is it kind of doesn't matter. Pick one
Okay.
and whatever's easiest.
To follow up question on that, you said that all of the benefits of Cloudflare. Can you tell me what your top benefits of that would be,
Well,
David?
there's a lot of security advantages. There's distribution advantages where they're taking copies of your site and distributing it across the web, so it's faster to get to from different locations.
Okay.
There's the CDN,
Mhm.
and that, from what I understand, it's all with the free program.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't pay Cloudflare, but I use it. I've liked it. I also, for DNS, it's a lot faster to refresh with DNS whenever I have to make a change, which is rare, but it just makes it go.
Okay.
So that's why I did it. But
I
Okay.
don't understand that though, because like WP Engine,
Mhm.
does all that. They offer all that, but then they do want you to get Cloudflare. And I'm like, why? If you offer all these things, why do you want us to go with Cloudflare?
that's a great question for them. I
Yeah.
wonder if, because the WP Engine does the CDN,
Yeah, but they also have servers all around the world,
right? So the distribution.
multi-cluster. So, and their speed is really fast. I just don't, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe it's the security aspect that they don't do that Cloudflare does.
They have really good security.
Yeah. They're good. I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're good on the server side, but there's DNS attack kind of things that Cloudflare does really well,
Oh, okay.
and maybe that's why they're recommending it. I
Okay.
can only speculate.
Okay.
Huh.
Yeah, so triple dub.
Thank you. I know Cloudflare is kind of on my list, and so yeah.
Yeah, I eventually pulled the trigger. It was on my list too, and I was like, I switched web hosts, and then it said, I'm paying for it through the web host, so I might as well just roll it out. I ran into some glitches, especially because I forgot that my email was set up weird.
That's the one. Yes, that's
Yeah.
the one thing that. So I have G Suite, which I think I could probably figure out without much problem. But
Right.
I have I have a client that has what's Office 365,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I don't know. I wouldn't know where to begin to do that.
I would anticipate it not to be too much different. Either way, you're setting your DNS records to send,
Yeah.
and I'm no expert in this by any stretch, but your MX record, is it, for email?
Yeah. MX is email.
You're setting that to, I imagine G Suite, or sorry, Outlook 365 probably works the same way.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if it didn't, but.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so your next question, moving down the list. So you're asking about the social settings within the Yoast plugin. And there's different tabs within the Yoast plugin when it comes to social media posts.
Yeah.
So you're asking, should we implement what's on each of the tabs?
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's different tabs, and it looks like they want you to put in stuff, an open graph metadata. Should we implement, and how is this different than someone sharing right now, which tends to bring up a featured photo anyways? So
Yeah.
I don't really understand why.
So I really quickly checked my install of Yoast. Yoast installs the Open Graph and Twitter card markup automatically once you install Yoast. From those tabs, you can disable it if you want, but it should be enabled already. So double check that the enabled box is powered. And that's, again, one of these really nice features that Yoast just does out of the box that you just don't even have to mess with. The features within each tab are things like, for Facebook, you can put a default image if there is not a featured image, what Facebook will show as default. So,
Yeah.
and that's nice. That's just a nice to have.
Yeah, that helped me once recently when I had I went to share something on Facebook and the wrong image came up, and I knew because of that I hadn't done something in that part of it. Because
Right.
the one that came up was not what I wanted to come up, so I was able to fix that.
Yeah, yeah. By default, Yoast will publish what you set as the featured image on a post level within WordPress. So I always set the featured image. It's not just about putting an image at the top of the page, it's about setting a featured image.
Yeah.
And it will automatically do that. And so then what happens when you share that post on Facebook, it highlights whatever the featured image is. What Yoast allows you to do, because some pages won't have a featured image, you can set a default one, which
Okay, yeah.
is my company logo.
So yeah, I see the Facebook. Now, where do we enable this feature? Add open graph metadata. Enable this feature if you want Facebook and other social media display a preview with images. Facebook app ID. What did they
So
want?
you don't need that.
You don't need the Facebook app ID?
No, just skip it.
Okay, but then Twitter is easy. It just asks which you want the default card type to be. That doesn't have anything. And then Pinterest wants a Pinterest confirmation. I guess I have to click this link.
Yeah, that's Pinterest. If Pinterest is a marketing tactic you want to use. So we've talked before how we should probably all focus on a few social medias rather than just broadcast everything. Mm-hmm. So if you're consumer oriented, design oriented, landscape oriented, landscapers do really well on Pinterest. You know, then you can go through the verification process and verify your site with Pinterest, and that will insert better analytics and the ability to share things on Pinterest a little easier. But if your site is not, if you're not actively trying to show on Pinterest and you don't have a Pinterest share button or things like that, then you could probably just get away with it, skipping it.
So
how do you, it doesn't seem to go anywhere. When I click to confirm your site with Pinterest, I'm showing my web designs on there. So they're getting a lot of views, which is great.
Great.
But
I would, rather than go through the Yoast plugin, I would just go to your Pinterest account and see if you can figure out a way to verify your site with Pinterest. And then there's like a hex code, an MD5 code or something that you have to enter into your website.
Okay.
And put it in that tab in Yoast, and that will allow Pinterest to see it, and therefore you'll be connected with Pinterest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a question because are you just like in a blog post at the bottom where it has the Yoast? Is that where you are? And it has social. Is that where you are? Okay, because
social.
Well, it's not on the post. It's on in the left sidebar under Yoast. There's a submenu called social.
Okay, because I'm not seeing Pinterest in mine, and that's why I was confused. So
and from there's several tabs based on which different social media.
Okay, because I have
Twitter, Pinterest.
I see now. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, a lot of businesses, Pinterest doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Pinterest does well for you.
I don't have it hooked up, and that's why. Well, actually, I do have a Pinterest. So I have a Pinterest confirmation number in here. I guess I'd done at one point. Yeah. But when I go to my blog post, there's not a Pinterest like social share. There won't be, but there are for Facebook and Twitter.
Well, the social share is a totally different plugin than Yoast.
Well, no, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. It's part of Yoast. So when I scroll down to the bottom, it has Yoast, and it has SEO, readability, and social. And under social, it's Facebook and Twitter. Yeah.
I don't know. I've not messed with that. Okay. I don't think what the Pinterest thing does is change how things are displayed on Pinterest.
Uh-huh.
I think it allows you to have better access to data on Pinterest. So it
Okay.
probably won't, you can't designate how to share a post on Pinterest through that, like you do set up Open Graph or Twitter card markup.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's, not necessarily an SEO issue, but kind of those, hey, we've talked about before the value of sharing your content on SEO, on social, so it gets out there. Even if you don't get the SEO boost, it's probably still worth it for the traffic and stuff like that. And these kind of features allow your content to show up a lot better on the social networks rather than just no image, especially because so much of the social networks right now are very visually oriented.
Yeah.
Really do want a picture.
And I know, at least for us, a lot of our stuff links back to something on the website that we then utilize SEO on.
Yep.
So especially like blog posts, doing hot topics,
Yeah.
and keyword searches, even though we're sharing it on social, it's also, helping to increase that SEO.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Great. So this is one of those that I might defer to Tricia on this question. This next question, Steffi.
Okay.
It's about removing a photo submitted by a user of your house in Google My Business.
Yeah. So I would go into there and there's a place on it where you can flag it. So, and I think last week you had taken the address out and set it as a service area business.
Yeah, it's now showing the region of North Carolina, which is great.
Okay. And so that image is still there. It's probably a Google image.
It is.
By Google thing. So just go into it, and at the top right, there's a little flag, and you can just flag it as inappropriate. And then I think you have to select why and just kind of go down and pick the best thing, and then just put something about, shows a residence and this is a business. So.
Oh, okay, great.
And it might take a little while. I had to do that with the client this year. That was why they reached out to me. They were a service area business, but they actually had a UPS store that was showing, and it had the back dumpster showing as their business. And they're like, we just want this picture of this dumpster off of our business. And the first thing I was like, well, the reason is that's the back of the UPS store. You're not supposed to do this. So we fixed it. And I do think I flagged that image, but it wasn't long after it came down. So.
Actually, I think because I took my address off, it's no longer showing.
Okay, so it may be automatic. It might just have taken it a little bit of time. So yeah, I couldn't remember if I had actually gone in and flagged it or if it takes it off itself. But when you say service area business, it may automatically. I had someone else that it was another unusual thing where they had their business, and they had at one point put their address in, and they tried to remove it, but they had somehow removed everything except for the city and state. So it still showed a picture of their home, even though it was showing service area business. I couldn't figure out. Finally, it was like, oh, it needs to completely clear the address out. And I think it was like from a while back, because nowadays Google doesn't let you just put city and state. You have to say service area business.
Yeah.
But then I was able to get rid of that image too. But yeah, that a lot of that times that happens.
Okay, great.
Okay. I've been impressed with Google My Business lately. I had a problem where a client was in probably a 40-story high-rise somewhere, and their address was listed as the gift shop on the first floor. And while it would get you to the building, obviously they don't want their clients going to the gift shop. And they were so frustrated, and I kept submitting it as a, not true. Then eventually, for another Asian, I actually got in touch with Google My Business support. I was really impressed with how well they handled it and how quickly they responded.
That's good. I've had a lot of success with them as well. I will say that because of COVID, there are times where it takes a while. So, so that's good. Yeah, I've been through a lot of working with them with their support. So, yeah.
A semi-unrelated tidbit at my previous job, we had a lot of trouble with people coming for interviews because when they put our address in on certain map applications, it would send them somewhere else, to the point that that other building put a sign up that said, this is not blah 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 address, please go follow that. And they put literal directions on it because so many people would go there thinking it was something else. And even that, it's such a funny thing, like when you think about how to adjust something like that, because even something as simple as like getting delivery, where I'll be on my little app and I'm like, well, they're going the wrong way because their GPS thinks that they can go that way and they can't.
Yeah.
And you're like, how do I tell Google what to do about this? Like, how can I tell Google you can't send people that way to come to my house? And you know, when it's not a business, you're like, what do I do? I just want my pizza. Like,
Yeah, some of that is the pin on the map, but again, some of it, like you said, is the directions how to get there. I went to see a friend over Thanksgiving, and all of a sudden I called her. I'm like, so I just crossed a railroad tracks and it's dark and a dead end. I was like, where are you taking me? And she's like, she's like, and it basically was on the other side of the track, just like in a complex. So, but yeah. So
we're all so programmed by these where we'll do exactly. It's like the episode in The Office where they drive straight into the
one of my top 3 favorite episodes, by the way. This is the lake.
Well, you don't like Scott's Tots?
Oh my gosh.
All right. So here is a really complicated question that will take the rest of our time, or maybe not. So this is for e-commerce tracking. Do we need to add the tracking code set up with Google Tag Manager for it to work after turning on?
Yeah, so this link I have, I should show you my screen probably.
All right, let me give you permission. Now you've got permission.
Okay, share screen. So here is you had a link to set up e-commerce tracking.
Yeah.
And I've enabled e-commerce there, but I'm not sure if, what was it? Do I need to do any of this stuff?
So
these two, I guess.
Yeah, so e-commerce tracking with Google Analytics involves changing a couple things. It involves changing your Google Analytics code, but it also means your e-commerce system has to be able to send the data into Google Analytics. So there's 2 functions that you have to fix in order to have full e-commerce tracking. The code that you put on the site, but whatever the e-commerce system has to be able to send information like, this was a transaction, they purchased this many items worth this much dollars worth of stuff, and it was completed. So Google Analytics needs to have that information somehow, and that is, you're reliant upon your e-commerce platform for that part to work. So for instance, Shopify does that automatically. WooCommerce, I believe you have to buy a separate plugin to enable that feature, but I do so little with WooCommerce because I really don't enjoy doing e-commerce stuff. That might be the solution. I know of some really, really bad e-commerce solutions who just don't even have this ability, which in my mind is almost malpractice. So which e-commerce platform are we talking about here?
WooCommerce.
WooCommerce. So I think you have to look for a WooCommerce Google Analytics plugin or feature or add-on or something so that WooCommerce can send the proper data into Google Analytics.
So like, you're saying a plugin would be easier to do this than to do this?
So what this is all about, how to set up the code that's displaying the Google Analytics code that's being present on the site.
Mhm.
That can be done any number of ways, manually adding the code, using Tag Manager, serve the code, or whatever. But there's another piece that we're not talking here, which is the piece that's actually sending properly encoded information to Google Analytics.
They don't mention that here?
Now, let me read this here and see if I can see, but I don't think they do.
Why?
Okay, well, it's, if you lose a third-party shopping cart or track transactions across separate, you have to do.
Cross domain.
Okay, there you go. The second paragraph, to collect e-commerce data from a website, you need to add JavaScript to your site that sends analytics to transaction and product data. That you can either build manually, which would probably involve hacking WooCommerce and building your own stuff, which was never a good idea, or you can use the WooCommerce feature, plugin, whatever WooCommerce calls it, in order to automatically do that. But this is kind of assuming that you have a custom built e-commerce platform.
Oh,
You know, they've written this so broadly. So that shows you the kind of information that has to be sent to Google Analytics in order for Google Analytics to say, oh, a transaction has occurred and this transaction is worth so many dollars. So you can attribute the goal, meaning the sale of a product, to the source and everything within Google Analytics.
well, we get Yoast for WooCommerce. I would have thought that does this stuff, but no, I guess not.
Well, what do you mean you got Yoast for WooCommerce?
Well, you know, to help with their product listings, but
Yeah.
that's not necessarily tracking, but yeah.
Right.
So, okay, so I guess my next question was like, one of the questions was I've never done Google. I set it up finally, but I'm like trying to figure out how to even add just Google Analytics code to that. It's like a lot of variables to look through. I'd
So
do an example.
I think once you do it once, you'll realize how easy it is.
Okay.
Because Tag Manager, the best analogy to describe is like a bucket that holds all of your tracking codes. One of those tracking codes could be Google Analytics. So you have to tell it in Tag Manager what code gets set up on what page, and that's it. Now it's a little more complicated than that, but you can do it really, really simply. So
Oh yeah, it's a website. That's right. It's a different
website. Now, unless you're doing e-commerce tracking, the way I recommend adding Google Analytics to a WordPress website at this point is using the SiteKit plugin. It is Google's Google Analytics site tracking plugin.
You really recommend that because that's added as a plugin to the website, so you don't have to go to this other place.
You can actually use the SiteKit plugin to serve analytics through Google Tag Manager. And it just sets it all up. It even verifies your Google Search Console at the same time.
I just don't like adding on. Is it just do that, or does it do more? Lets you add more
It
text?
displays some analytics data in your website.
I don't like. See, I like just adding it directly. I don't like another plugin.
So the I empathize with you on that, because if you put it straight in the plugin, it's done, it's good. However, Google will sometimes update the code. Sometimes clients will need to customize the code. In that sense, using the plugin is a superior solution because it'll automatically keep things up to date.
But if I put everything in Tag Manager, which is, I think, a good idea.
Yes.
I feel like if we made that a routine going forward, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, and what I used to do is ask developers to add Tag Manager manually on the site. But since Google released SiteKit, I started only doing, sorry, you're still sharing your screen, right?
Yeah, I'm just bringing up the
Yeah.
Google Tag Manager to try and figure out how
I
to,
really like SiteKit for most uses.
yeah.
And you can use you can tell SiteKit to serve Google Analytics using Tag Manager, which means it's installing Tag Manager on your site, so you can continue to use Tag Manager for other things like a Facebook tracking pixel or LinkedIn tracking pixel, Hotjar usability testing can all be still served through Tag Manager. But SiteKit just installs Tag Manager for you really well. Real easy, lightweight, works.
It installs Tag Manager, like everything. You can do more tags, not just Google Analytics.
Absolutely.
Oh, SiteKit does that on the website, so you can
Yes.
access it there.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that
Yes.
makes sense then.
Yeah.
Because there was something yesterday that that I was a webinar thing, and one of the things that I think was slowing down a lot of sites is if you put your Google Analytics code at the top, and it's something about that slows it down. So this will get rid of that issue.
SiteKit will?
Well, I would assume so, because you're not putting it, something about where you put it at the, if you put it in the header, there's something and you don't do something else, it'll slow it down. I don't know.
I don't know. I've heard a lot of developers really struggling with page speed, and they blame a lot of Google Analytics on it because
Yeah.
it's a way to say it's not my problem, it's their fault.
Well, and they had an answer for it. It was like, we'll do this, and then Google Analytics is not at the top like that. I can't remember where I had it written down, but I would think that that plugin,
Nope, not that one. Google SiteKit.
Google SiteKit. Okay.
Maybe it's 2 words, SiteKit.
Okay. Yeah, they want it specific. It's crazy.
There it is.
SiteKit by Google. Okay.
That's it. Everyone's, who knows what kind of malware that other one's going to install.
Yeah. All right, cool. So
Yeah.
that installs, okay, that makes more sense. And then is it it's pretty easy to use?
Yeah, it's a wizard that'll set you up. If just make sure you connect it with your existing Google Analytics account, so it doesn't create a new one for you. And then you can, and I don't want to show how to set this up on the YouTube like this. So could you stop sharing your screen?
Okay.
So you follow the directions, connect it with your existing Google Analytics account, and then look through SiteKit and make sure you're using Tag Manager to serve it. You could even have PageSpeed Insights installed. I mean, it's not installing anything. It's basically just applying it and giving the data in your dashboard for every page. It's nice. It's a nice little lightweight plugin that does a lot of really good things real easily. I can see you getting to a point where it's not enough. If you have advanced analytics things like on Curious Ants, I would like to get to the point where I could start tracking users as they go through the site. I'm going to have to break out of this in order to do that. But that's more an advanced Google Analytics feature.
You wanna
So
track how much work I haven't done?
yeah. But yeah, I hope that helps. With WordPress, this is thankfully really easy. If we're going to do Tag Manager manually, it's a little more difficult. But once you see it, you're like, oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah, and I think it's good that someone, like, the thing is, when we take over websites, we don't know where things are.
Yeah.
If you don't have a plugin there to know, that is helpful, I think, to know that, okay, this is Google Tag Manager connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think from a web design building perspective, to add Google Analytics within the theme you'd have to start with a daughter theme, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to update the theme.
Mhm.
And daughter themes tend to be slow because the way WordPress serves up content sometimes it serves up content that's not, or CSS files and stuff that aren't even needed. Daughter themes are not a very fast way to build. Sorry, they don't build very fast websites. So if you could use a plugin to serve Google Analytics and avoid having to create daughter themes just to have Google Analytics on a page, for instance, there's other real legitimate reasons to do daughter themes. But if the only reason to do it is to add Google Analytics, just use this plugin, it'll be better.
Okay, so getting back to then this G tag thing, you're saying we have to do this like a tag for each and every product and all?
No, so, well, okay. You really couldn't manually add this in because this is dependent upon what a user buys. But this is the information that is being sent into Google Analytics from the e-commerce platform, right? So for instance, this example, the value is 23.07 US dollars. Okay, cool. What if they didn't buy $23.07 worth of stuff? What if they bought $123.07 worth of stuff, right? You won't know that until the person's actually purchasing. So you couldn't manually put this code into the site and send that data to Google. You need some system that's connected with your analytics package, in this case, or your e-commerce package, in this case, WooCommerce. So WooCommerce needs to be able to send this information into Google Analytics. Because WooCommerce knows this person purchased $123.07 worth of stuff.
So it needs the Universal Analytics G tag installed?
No, you need it. Your e-commerce platform needs to send this to Google Analytics.
Which you're saying WooCommerce does or doesn't?
I don't know if they do or do not by default. I think you have to go through an extra plugin to do it.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right? So your e-commerce platform has to send data into Google Analytics. And I'm not familiar enough with WooCommerce to know whether it does it by default or you have to have a setting or some sort of extra plugin to do it. But
it says if you use gtag.js as your Google Analytics tag and you have e-commerce reporting enabled, you can measure e-commerce.
If you send them the data.
Yeah. So I guess it depends on, because I noticed with Google Analytics, there's many different ways of adding that tag now. And I was like, well, which one do I do now? Like there's 3 different ways. And so the G tag, I guess, is one way. It sounds like we need to make sure that's installed and then it will send information.
No. Google Analytics has no idea what the user does as far as the transaction or when the transaction is complete. That's why your e-commerce platform has to send Google Analytics the data. The code you put on your site allows Google Analytics to be able to receive the data, but it has no idea what that data is until your e-commerce platform sends it to Google Analytics.
Okay, I just feel like they're not giving very good direction.
They are not, because they are writing platform agnostic, right? There's any number of e-commerce platforms out there, and they can't write a solution for every one of them. So you'll have to research based on your e-commerce platform to know how to send the information into Google Analytics.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wish there was a one thing, but it's just the fact that Google Analytics doesn't know. It knows that it wants to collect Google Analytics or e-commerce data, and you can set it up to be able to collect it, but you still need to have that data from your e-commerce platform.
Has anyone here done this before? Okay.
Now you know why I hate e-commerce.
E-commerce isn't, yeah,
E-commerce
I'm
sucks.
with David. I stay away from e-commerce, but of course, I'm gonna probably have on my, when I get my new website done, we'll have some WooCommerce, you know, for a few things, but not a lot. So based on that, I might just ignore that.
I just feel like I haven't really done this with my my clients very well. I haven't managed to figure out the Google Analytics part for them for e-commerce yet. And this is where I need to find out more.
I would simply Google WooCommerce,
Yeah.
Google Analytics, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure WooCommerce has a way to send the data in,
Okay.
but I can't say that for sure because I've also seen some crappy e-commerce solutions who have no ability to do this, which is terrible in my book. I would never use them, but Shopify automatically does it for you because they're already set up to do it.
Okay.
Magento automatically does it.
Yeah.
Big Commerce automatically does it.
Wow, that's interesting that WooCommerce doesn't.
I would assume.
Maybe it's just there's a checkbox back there you got to check,
Yeah.
right? It could be that.
Yeah.
It sure needs to be by default, and it's very disappointing if it's not.
Yeah.
But if it's not, there's probably someone who's built the plugin to help you do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the e-commerce tracking is a pain. It's necessary. It's so hard to do because it's platform dependent, and Google Analytics isn't smart enough to assume that stuff, right? We has to receive that information.
Great. Awesome.
Well, okay, I hope that helped. We got to a lot of stuff. We didn't get to everything. So we'll save some questions for next time. I'm going to sign off, but I have a couple questions for everybody before we take off. All right, so hold on a second and we'll say thank you. And how do I stop recording? Bye.